Hello, this is Tony Meyer, and today I will be presenting some of the key takeaways from the course Effective Classroom Management for the 21st Century Teacher. This presentation will focus on several important things that we must consider when developing classroom management plans. We will discuss the goals of classroom management, the collaborative classroom, creating classroom expectations and procedures, building positive student-teacher relationships, and finally, addressing off-task behaviors. The final part of this presentation is an evaluation in which I ask for your feedback about this video. The goals of classroom management. In a particular section of this course, this quote really caught my attention. The teacher should show excitement about the teaching process, model positive behavior, and express joy in teaching and learning. What a great common sense statement. Think of it this way. As a student, which would you rather have? A teacher that trudges in, throws their briefcase on the floor, sits in their chair, and tells you to get out your textbook, or the teacher who meets students in the hallway with a high five, calls them by name, is smiling, is energetic, and is ready to share their knowledge of cool stuff with their class? I think it goes without saying that most of us would choose the second teacher. If a teacher conveys that they are genuinely happy to be in the classroom, that joy will undoubtedly be infectious. So then, what is the overall goal of classroom management? In a word, prevention. If undesirable activities are prevented from happening, then obviously we do not have to take up class time to address them. It's kind of like shopping. Stores try to prevent shoplifting so they don't have to deal with shoplifters. Not that our classrooms are full of shoplifters, but classroom management is meant to prevent unwanted behaviors from occurring in the first place. Our learning time is finite, so a solid classroom management plan can also help motivate our students. We should ultimately try and achieve a situation where our students are motivated to be engaged in learning and not focusing on misbehaviors. Every second that has to be spent on misbehavior is lost learning time. So, what is a way that we can motivate our students to take ownership in their learning environment in an effort to maximize their learning time? Creating a collaborative classroom is a possible solution. So, what is a collaborative classroom? A collaborative classroom consists of some very general components, but is one in which students have shared ownership in the overall plan. The first step is to establish common goals. What do we want to accomplish in this classroom? You may have some students that want it to spiral into chaos, but the majority will understand the opportunity that is being presented. That opportunity is a voice. That voice is another chance for them to take ownership in their learning environment. The next step is to compromise and listen. I would not recommend walking into a classroom with zero plans for classroom management. Ill-advised. However, you should have a plan, but be willing to listen to your students and compromise as it is appropriate. They will respect the fact that you're taking their thoughts into consideration. Trust me. Now, you should move into assigning roles and responsibilities. As crazy as it may sound, most people, including even junior high students, appreciate having a role, a place within the society of the classroom. You will inevitably have at least one student that feels their destiny is to become President of the United States. So you may have to reel them in, but every student can serve in a functional role within the classroom. It can be as simple as, Jake, you are in charge of emptying the recycling. And Kate, will you please make sure the assignments are updated on the board? These are simple things that we can easily do ourselves, but for some students, providing a sense of purpose is key. You then have to determine measures for accountability. What happens if someone does not take care of their responsibilities or does something that goes against our class's common goals? This is another opportunity to compromise and listen. You may have an idea of what you want to do as an intervention, but it is sometimes a breath of fresh air to listen to a student's peers brainstorm or even lawyer up as it pertains to an infraction from a classmate. The last component of a collaborative classroom is to assess progress and give feedback often. This does not have to be anything formal. It could be as simple as a 5-minute discussion of the week at the end of a Friday class. Did we work toward our goals this week? Did we take care of our responsibilities? Is there anything else we need to think about for next week? Keep the lines of communication open with your students, and they will be more than willing to share. Our next point of emphasis is going to be on classroom expectations. Your expectations need to be real, not overreaching. We all have high hopes, but having an expectation such as, everyone will earn 100% on all assignments, well, this is just not feasible. If your expectation is that everyone will turn in assignments on time, this is both tangible and measurable. Your expectations also need to be positive. Try and use do statements, such as, do show respect to one another. You're telling students what they should be doing. Try to stay away from don't statements, such as, don't be rude. This simply implies that they are already rude, and that is definitely a mindset that we don't want our students to accept. Finally, your expectations need to be understandable. Let's revisit our show respect to one another expectation. An easy way to make this understandable is to model appropriate behaviors, but also give instances that are opposite the expectation. It could be something as simple as asking a question such as, if I knock your textbook on the floor, am I being respectful? Your students will hopefully state that you are obviously not being respectful to the other student, and some may even point out that you are disrespecting school property. Again, if your expectations are real, positive, and understandable, students will realize that they can successfully meet your expectations on a daily basis. Our next key takeaway involves classroom procedures. Your procedures need to be early and often. According to Emmer, Evertson, and Anderson, many classroom studies have shown that the level of order created during the first few days of school reliably predicts the degree of student engagement and disruption for the rest of the year. Therefore, your classroom procedures need to be established from day one. This is your opportunity to state each procedure, answer any questions that may arise, and also address consequences for not following the procedure. Not only should your procedures be ingrained from the beginning, they should be revisited throughout the year. We review content material. Why not review the rules of the classroom? It's also a good idea to post your classroom procedures in your room. I personally have mine posted near my smartboard and my clock, two places I know students look to very often. Your procedures should also be concrete. In order for procedures to quell unwanted behaviors, there cannot be a gray area. Keep your procedures concise. If you go into a paragraph about when assignments are due, you are opening yourself up to various forms of interpretation. For instance, if your procedure states, homework is due at the beginning of class on the due date, that's pretty straightforward. This should hopefully eliminate the, I thought we got class time to work on it, argument. This leads us into our final topic under procedures, adherence. This is definitely where this category falls under the premise of consistency. If students need to learn our classroom procedures, it is paramount that we as teachers adhere to our own rules. If you have a procedure such as, students must use a hall pass in order to use the restroom or get a drink, you will have to adhere to this. Otherwise, the floodgates will open and suddenly every single student is dying of thirst. Adhere to your procedures and students will buy into them as well. Building positive student-teacher relationships. Since we have covered some of the more concrete procedural items as it relates to classroom management, we will now move on to how teachers can develop meaningful, positive relationships with their students that should also help curtail unwanted behaviors. It all starts with respect. It all starts with the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Treat your students with respect, and more often than not, they will reciprocate. Next step is trust. Develop a sense of trust in your classroom. Tell your students you trust that they will make the right decisions. They must trust you as well, so you must build this trust with them. Trust is earned, not simply given. Provide guidance. If you see that a student is struggling, do what you can to find out how to help. Maybe they just want someone to listen. If appropriate, provide a little adult advice. You can be professional and compassionate at the same time. Be encouraging. You can be the number one fan of each of your students, and you should. All students, regardless of background, are capable of great things. Provide the encouragement to push them to the best of their abilities. The final thing to remember when building these relationships is to show that you care. If you do not care about kids, then you are in the wrong profession. Be invested in the kids. Celebrate their victories. Console them in their losses. But most of all, be there for them. Some of our students do not have that backing at home. Be the one to sincerely provide support. Now that we've discussed several preventative strategies, we will discuss what happens if, even after we have done all that we can to be proactive, a student gets off task. There are several interventions that may take place, but I'm going to focus on the two-level approach to addressing off-task behaviors. The first level is based on teacher-administered instructive consequences. Basically, it means that as teachers, we determine the appropriate solution. However, there are some things to keep in mind when developing our solution. They're known as the 3 R's. These are not the same 3 R's you learn in elementary science, reduce, reuse, and recycle, which are very important. Rather, these 3 R's are related, respectful, and reasonable. Related, simply put, means that the solution should, quote, directly and proportionally fit the behavior. For instance, if a student forgets to turn in their homework, a related solution would not be a suspension. This is overkill for a relatively minor infraction. A more appropriate solution may be, for example, coming in for 10 minutes after school to complete the assignment, or maybe even finishing the assignment during their lunch period. The second R, respectful, means to follow up on these solutions while maintaining the student's dignity. If the student from the aforementioned scenario is finishing the assignment at lunch, the last thing a teacher would need to do is stand over them at the lunch table with all of the student's peers as an audience. The final R stands for reasonable. Reasonable means that it does not do any good to continue adding punishment. A piled-on punishment is only going to bring about resentment toward the teacher and the school. Do not cause a snowball effect that cannot be reversed. Level 2, then, is a student-included intervention. During this, the student has some say and some ownership in what they feel an appropriate solution would be. This provides a level of collaboration between student and teacher to come up with common ground for the solution. Here's a list of some of the outside resources that I used to put together this presentation. However, there is a wealth of accessible information about classroom management strategies right at our fingertips. Finally, this slide is a presentation evaluation. I have posted a few questions and your responses would be greatly appreciated. These questions are just to give you a start, but if there is any other input you have for me, feel free to share. You can just drop your feedback in the comments section for this video. I appreciate you taking the time to watch my presentation about effective classroom management strategies for the 21st century teacher. Thanks again, and good luck this fall.